Okay, we're going to continue with chapter 5, section 3. Go ahead, Michael, ask your question. Number 56?
Yeah, it is 12x squared minus 3x
Minus 3x.
minus 9.
When you graph, when you factor, right, this is a parabola. The reason why we factor is to find out where it crosses the x-axis, okay? And the first thing you need to look for, you've got the 12, the 3, and the 9, and right away I look and I can see that I can factor out a 3. So I want to use distributive property to factor out a 3. I will have 4x squared minus x minus 3. That's your first step. The next thing we do, so we're going to use our guess and check method. For 3, it's going to have to be 3 and 1. It's the only two numbers multiplied together to give you 3. For 4, for the first term, I could have 2x and 2x, or I could have 4x and 1x. The more you do, the better you get at it. And we think it's going to be 4x and 4x, because if you look at the two outside terms and the inside terms, 4x and 3x, I can get this middle term. I can get the negative 1x. I know the signs are going to be different because we have a negative 3. So 4x times negative 1 is negative 4x plus 3x will give me the negative x. Okay. So that's completely factored. John?
Are you supposed to take 3 out like that?
Yes. You don't have to,
Okay, yeah.
but it makes your factoring a lot easier. Today, let me add just one thing that we're going to do here today that's different from yesterday. We're going to find the zeros. We're going to solve this to find the zeros. And that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, but before we do that, I've got a couple other things. Is there anybody else who has a question on from 30 through 57 on factoring? No, I'm not. And the reason I'm not going to give the answers is because you can check them so easy, you know if you're right or wrong. Because if you use FOIL, 4x times x is 4x squared. You've got the 3 still outside here. And then 4x times negative 1 is negative 4x. 3 times x is a positive 3x. And 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. If I combine these two middle terms, I have 4x squared minus x minus 3. And then when I distribute the 3, I will get 12x squared minus 3x minus 9. And that's what we started with. So if you do that to every problem, you're going to know if you're right or wrong. So there's no sense in me reading the answers. All right? You okay with everything so far? All right, let me erase this. And let's look at a problem, 3x times x plus 4 minus 2 times x plus 4. Yesterday we discussed on how to factor that. Remember what it is?
3x minus 2 minus 4.
You take the 3x minus 2, and we multiply times the common factor of x plus 4. That's factored. The key here is these two have to be the same. That's the key. All right? You okay with that, Rudy?
If 3x and negative 2 are in parentheses, can you still do the same thing?
Yes. let's take another example, and let's take 15x squared minus, let's make that 15x cubed minus 5x squared plus 9x minus 3. We have 4 terms here. And this is something we didn't talk about yesterday. We have 4 terms. So what we're going to do here, if there's more than 3 terms, we look to factor by grouping. Grouping, parentheses, factor by grouping. Okay. So what we're going to do is factor the first 2 terms. I haven't really done anything to change things. All I've done is put parentheses here. And I'll group the second 2 together. Okay. And again, if you remove parentheses, you're going to get the same thing that you started with. Now, if you look at that first parenthesis, what we can factor out is what? You see it? Not 15. 5x squared. 5x squared times x, 3x, that'll give me the 15x cubed, minus 1. So I have 5x squared times 3x minus 1, plus, and what can I factor out of 9x minus 3? 3. And I'll have 3x minus 1. So that we can see that these 2 factors are the same. And so I can factor like I factored the one above it, which is 5x squared plus 3 times the common factor of 3x. Okay? And that's how we factor by grouping. I wrote the same problem up here, okay, over to the right, but I changed the signs. I made it in 9x plus 3. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different. You have to watch out, especially if you have a minus there. I can group. That's no problem. And I think I'm going to rewrite the problem down below here. And if I group these 2, there's no problem. But the second 2, if I'm going to put a parenthesis in back of the negative for the 9, I must change that sign to a negative. Okay? So I want you guys to watch out for that. And the reason why, do you know why? If I distribute this negative, it's going to be negative 9x and a plus 3, so it wouldn't change anything. So when you put the parenthesis by a negative, you must change the second sign. Now, we're going to factor the same way we factored the other one, by factoring out a 5x squared. I'm going to have 3x minus 1 minus, and I'll factor out the 3, and I'll get 3x minus 1. And if you want to multiply everything back out and distribute and combine like terms, you're going to get what you started with. So I haven't changed anything, but I put it into a form where I can factor 5x squared minus 3 times the common factor of 3x minus 1. So be careful here when you put that parenthesis behind a negative that you change this second sign. This one right here. Change that from a plus to a minus. Okay? Factoring by grouping. second half of it, I'm going to show you just a couple of examples. The zero product property. All right, your directions will say factor and use a zero product property to find the zeros. This is all the same thing. We're looking to find the zeros. We're looking for a solution because now we're talking about equations. Find the zeros, find the solution. Sometimes you'll see find all the roots. And really, they are the x-intercepts. They're all the same. Okay? And the zero product property states that if a times b equals 0, then either a equals 0 or b equals 0, which kind of makes sense. If a is 0, 0 times b is 0, or if b is 0, then a times 0 is 0. Here's one of the problems, x squared minus 10x minus 56. That was in your homework from last night. I don't know the number that was, but it's one of your problems. And we're going to set this equation equal to 0 to solve it. We factor x minus 14, x plus 4. And one of these parentheses has to equal 0. So we'll set x minus 14 equal to 0 and x plus 4 equal to 0. And we solve. X equals 14, or x could equal negative 4. That means if you put in 14 for x in the original equation here, it will equal 0. And if you put negative 4 into x, it will also equal 0. This is where this parabola will cross the x-axis. Okay, does that make sense? Let's do one more, let's do a couple more examples here. Let's take g of x equals 6x squared minus 20x. Make that plus 20x minus 16. Okay? And we're looking to solve. We're looking to find the zeros. Use a zero product property to find the zeros. We're looking to where this crosses the x-axis. So we'll set the equation equal to 0. The first thing we look for when we factor, do any of these terms have anything in common? And they do. They're all divisible by 2. So we'll factor out a 2 first, and we're left with 3x squared plus 10x minus 8. From here, we look to factor. When you have the 3x squared, there's not a lot of choices that we have. It has to be 3x times x. It's the only two numbers multiplied together that will give you 3x squared. For 8, we have a choice. It could be 1 and 8. It could be 8 and 1. It could be 4 and 2, or 2 and 4. Those are our choices. The more you do, the better you get. And it's a guess and check. I know the signs are going to be different because we have a negative 8 at the end. So we'll make this plus and this minus. If you look at the outside-inside terms, they're going to equal 10x. The first two terms will give you 3x squared. Negative 2 times 4 gives you negative 8. And then the outside-inside terms will add up to 10x. so what is the solution? Well, either 3x minus 2 has to equal 0, or x plus 4 has to equal 0. What about the, well, we'll talk about the 2 on the outside. So let's add 2 and divide by 3. So x could equal 3 halves. Okay, or subtracting 4 from each side.
Should it be 2/3?
2/3, oh, I put 3 halves. Thank you. 2 divided by 3. All right, thank you, Adrian.
Yeah.
So x could equal 2/3, x could equal -4. That's 2 places where it crosses the x-axis. The 2 on the outside, in this case, it doesn't matter. 2 cannot equal 0.
So what is?
Okay. Where it does matter, let me take the same problem. I had done this with the other class, but I'm going to erase this. And let's say we have 6x cubed or minus 16x. Notice this 3, I have it circled. That means we have 3 solutions. We're going to be dealing with quadratics. That's an x squared term, 2 solutions. But because this is cubed, we're going to have 3 solutions. Set the equation equal to 0. We have 6x cubed plus 20x squared minus 16x. I don't think you're going to have anything like this in your homework. At least not for a couple of days yet. But now, instead of factoring out a 2, we're going to factor out 2x. And the result is going to be 6x squared. It's going to be 3x squared. Plus 10x minus 8. And we'll factor the same way we did before. And we have 3x minus 2. Okay, so we factored that parenthesis the way we factored before. And the zeros are going to be the same. 2/3 will be 1. -4 will be another. But then we have this variable on the outside. And this could also equal 0. 2x could also equal 0. And if you divide it by 2, then x could equal 0. In this case, because it's a cube, this is a cubic function, it's going to cross the x-axis. It's an S-shaped curve. It's going to cross the x-axis at 0, at 2/3, and at -4. Okay? So the homework for tonight will be on page 295 to 297, 7 through 9, 19 through 21, and 58 through 102. It's a lot of problems, so make use of your class time. Okay?
Thank you. But it is a lot of problems.
All right. Yes, it is.
Whoa, yeah.